My topic is gender representation in video games. In my abstract, the purpose of the study is to show how gender representation and sexism are overlooked in video games. Women in video games are looked at as the damsel in distress, while male characters are portrayed as big and strong. Analyzing the current content on video games can prove that genders are misrepresented and objectified. Research indicates that players' perspective on gender roles can be affected. However, some questions remain. Why does society ignore the issue with gender representation in video games? Another important question is how can we make another successful female led video game without the stereotypes? The cultivation theory will prove that people who are exposed to this kind of content will perceive the world's social realities as they are presented in video games. My study will help professionals understand that there are other ways to represent a female character in video games. It will show that professionals shouldn't give in to the heteronormativity that goes on in this society. The brief history in my paper, I talk about Samus and Lara Croft. Samus is the very first female-led protagonist in a video game. She is the very first playable character as a female too. If you ask anybody who the most popular female-led protagonist is, they're either going to say Samus or Lara Croft. Although Lara Croft is a popular female-led protagonist, she does come with critics. As you can see in the photo at the bottom, all the way to the left, she is featured in shorts with a tank top. That's in the 1996 Tomb Raider. The latest Lara Croft is featured in pants and a tank top. You can see that all the way to the right of the photo. Another good female protagonist is Jill Valentine in the Resident Evil series. She also does come with some critics, as you can see in the 1999, 2007, and 2012 Jill Valentines. She's featured in skirts. The 1999 Resident Evil, though, she's in a blue tube top, and on the bottom, she's actually wearing a skirt, mini skirt, which is totally unrealistic. If you're fighting monsters and zombies, you're gonna be wearing what she's wearing in like the 2011 Resident Evil, or something like the 2002 Resident Evil remake. Chris Redfield, as you can see in the left photo, this is the Resident Evil 5 Chris Redfield. You can see that his biceps are absolutely huge. This portrays him as the big and strong character. He does have a partner. Her name is Sheva Olimar. Chris Redfield really is like the protagonist of this game. It's clear by his muscles, the things that he says. He's just, he's typical male character in a video game. But as you can see in the right, he's featured as like a slim fit kind of guy instead of, giant biceps, and he looks kind of evil. That's the Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil Village game that just came out about a week ago. I also talked about Grand Theft Auto in my paper. I specifically mentioned the cover art for the video games and how the women are portrayed in the video games. As you can see in Grand Theft Auto Vice City, the woman is featured in a bikini holding a martini glass. In Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, you can see a woman licking her lips seductively. Also, in Grand Theft Auto 4, you can see a woman licking a lollipop kind of seductively. In Grand Theft Auto 5, you cannot find, you could find a working woman, but the only working woman in Grand Theft Auto 5 is either a stripper or a prostitute. You can't find a woman paramedic, police officer, construction worker, etc. Those are all taken up by males. To me, that's super unrealistic, and that totally sexually objectifies women. And Grand Theft Auto is known for doing this throughout all their games. I use the cultivation theory for my theoretical framework. Long exposure times can affect an individual's perception and behavior. In my survey, 35.9% of my participants voted that they noticed the issue with gender representation in video games, but they don't really care. I feel like this shows how people are just used to the content that is put out, and they don't really feel like it's a big issue in society today. My research questions: does society really care about the misrepresentation of gender in video games? What roles do females have in video games? And can long exposure to video games affect an individual's perception and behavior? The method that I used, I distributed a survey over Twitter, Discord, Facebook, and Zoom to random people of all ages. My main focus is the questions number 2, 8, and 9 in my survey. I would like to see how gender representation in video games is often overlooked and how it can affect society if exposed to that type of media for long periods of time. My survey questions: would you consider yourself to be a gamer? If you don't play video games at all, do you still see the issue with gender representation in video games? Are you male or female? Do you think females in video games are sexualized and objectified? Do you think males in video games are sexualized and objectified? If you do play video games, have you noticed any significant issues with how gender is portrayed in video games? Do you think the portrayal of gender in video games is accurate? Do you think games that have graphic content could be an influence on younger children in a negative way? Why? If you do think there's a misrepresentation of gender in video games, how much does it bother you? And any additional comments? The results from my survey were quite disappointing. To begin with, not a lot of people took my survey. I only had like 39 participants that took my survey. 32.4% of the people who don't play video games recognize the issue with the topic. 59% of those participants identified as a female. 41% participants identified as male. And then next, I have some graphs that were in my survey showing the results. I think females in video games are sexualized and objectified. 30.8% strongly agree. 10.3% disagree. 17.9% are neutral. 41% agree. I think males in video games are sexualized and objectified. Nobody strongly agreed with this statement. 25.6% agree. 33.3% are neutral about it. 25.6% disagree. And 12.8% strongly disagree. Do you think the portrayal of gender in video games is accurate? 7.7% said yes, 59% said no, 33.3% said somewhat. If you do think there's a misrepresentation of gender in video games, how much does it bother you? 20.5% said it bothers me a lot. 15.4% said it bothers me, but not too much. 23.1% said we're neutral about this. And as I mentioned before, 35.9% said I've noticed but don't really care. See, to me that number shocks me right there. Which that just leads me to my conclusion on how a lot of people really do overlook the issue with gender representation in video games. Only 39 participants took my survey. When I distributed my survey over Twitter, Discord, and Facebook, I have 400 followers on Twitter, 32 friends on Discord, and 279 friends on Facebook, and only 39 people participated in my survey. Some of the answers I got were just people trolling and not taking it seriously. This is pretty much how I felt it was going to turn out. Society can be blind about this issue, and I believe cultivation theory has an influence on this. Not a lot of people take this topic seriously because they just simply think the issue isn't true or it just doesn't exist. And that is the end of my presentation.